So we finish up our 8th week in the book of Acts, chapter 2. And we're doing 2 verses today, fairly short, verses 32 and 35. So go ahead and see if you can pronounce it. Here's my pronunciation. Ugar David anebe, eis tous uranus, lege de autos, epen ho kurios to kurio mu, kathu ek dexion mu, verse 35, heos antho tous ekthrus su, hupopodion ton podon su. Okay, now see if you can translate it. Here's my translation. For not David ascended into the skies, for David didn't ascend into the heavens, but he himself says, intensive use of autos. There are, autos can be used as a personal pronoun, him, her, of him, and so forth. When it has an article on it, it means same, the identical use of the pronoun. But when it's in the nominative case, as it is here, it intensifies the subject with the intensive use of the pronoun. The subject is he here, David, and so he himself, it gives a little oomph, as he himself, as David himself says. And then we have a direct quote, direct discourse. Said the Lord to the Lord of me, the Lord said to the Lord of me. In Hebrew, of course, the first Lord is Yahweh, the name of God, and the second Lord is Adonai. And so it's the Lord, Yahweh, saying to, now the way that the early Christians conceived of this was that it was David speaking of the Messiah. So the Lord, Yahweh, said to my Lord, Jesus, a quote within a quote, hold on for the ride of your life. You know, here's the second direct discourse within the direct discourse. Sit from the rights of me. Sit on my right hand. It's an idiom, or I would call it that. Verse 35, until I should place. This on is untranslatable particle it's like a little bomb. Boom. It makes everything contingent, throws everything up in the air. It's a bomb. And so with the on, we're going to have a subjunctive. This is a subjunctive of tithemi, and I'll talk a little bit later about tithemi. Doesn't look like tithemi, does it? So it's a temporal clause, or a temporal, conditional temporal clause, something like that. Until I should put the enemies of you as a footstool of the feet of you. Okay. So there you have the translation. By the way, the psalmist, original psalm, which may or may not have been by David. I haven't looked at Psalm 110. I'll do that for the Saturday Scholar version. But the psalmist is speaking of the king here, so it's probably not David actually. The Lord, Yahweh, said to my Lord, the king, sit at my right hand. So it's an enthronement psalm originally. A lot of the enthronement psalms became messianic psalms in the New Testament. The New Testament authors interpreted the Old Testament, and God inspired them to interpret the Old Testament from within their paradigms, from within their frame of references. And so anyway, I know it gets a little messy, but after extensive look at these examples, this is the reasonable conclusion to come to. Okay, let's go on to the interlinear then and go into more detail. So for is a postpositive. It's a conjunction. Doesn't come where it's supposed to. We're going to put it first in our English translations. For not David went up. This is anabino. Anabino, we've seen it before, I believe. Bino in the aorist goes to bay, and there's a little augment. So it is aorist. We'll parsing in a moment. For David did not ascend to the skies, heaven, skies, all the same for the ancients. For us, heaven is quite different from skies, but not for them. But he himself says, I've already talked about the intensive use of the pronoun there, quote, said the Lord to the Lord of me. And then another quote, kathu ek dexion mu, sit on the rights, from the rights of me. This is an imperative, and I'll review imperatives in a moment. This is a middle or passive imperative, second person singular, but it's kathemai. It's a deponent word. So it's going to have an ending that looks middle or passive, but it's going to be active in its meaning. Sit down. Until I should put I'm going to talk about tithemi also in a second. Tithemi loses the ti. The me verbs lose their funny reduplication with an iota when they go into other tenses. And so since this is aorist, it loses the ti on tithemi. The omega is subjunctive. The subjunctive becomes o, ace, a, omen, eta, osi with long connecting vowels. It's the long connecting vowel more than anything else that is a sign of the subjunctive. Subjunctive, as if you don't remember, has to do with contingency. Subjunctive is used in, so if the indicative mood has to do with factual statements, which can be true or false, or factual questions. Subjunctive has to do with conditions or with contingent situations or should kinds of questions. So it's a different mode, it's a different mood in Greek. Until I make your enemies as a footstool. So footstool is an apposition to enemies. Make your enemies to equal footstool. And so this is accusative because this is accusative. And that happens. When something's an apposition to something, it takes the same case as the thing it's an apposition to. Okay, parsing. I've already done some of this. I've told you this is aorist because we've just memorized it. It's up the aorist of bino. It's irregular. Here's the augment. This is a third person singular ending, unfortunately. So it's aorist active indicative third singular from anabino. Apin, hopefully you know it's aping an aorist. The aorist of Lego. We just have to memorize these dirty dozen second aorist, irregular aorists. So it's aorist. But I do know a nu with an epsilon in front of it is a movable nu. Throw it away is often a movable nu, not always. So that makes epsilon a very common third person singular, past tense, active, indicative ending. Okay, kathu, I'm going to review these in a second. It is present, kathemai. This is the second person singular imperative form for the middle or present middle or passive, but it is deponent and it's imperative. Sit, ubu, sit. Be sitting. I mean, you might get the present continuous flavor in there because Jesus is still sitting, you know, at the right hand of God. Again, aorist drops the ti on a me verb, so we're left with they as the core, and then with the subjunctive, it's going to go tho. Okay. Now, this is a slide we've had earlier in our trek through Acts. Let me remind you that you just have to memorize the second person singular imperatives. And here's the song. Lu e, lu lu san, lu si, lu the ti, lu e, lu san, lu si, lu the ti, lu e, lu san, lu si, lu the ti, lu e, lu san, lu si, lu the ti. Song by Rory Skelly years ago. Okay, so you can see that this is the middle or passive imperative ending, kathu. Okay, I also, I did a slide on me verbs earlier, but I did ditto me. And so I thought I would go ahead and show you how the same principles work out with tithemi. What I usually say is that there are 2.5 irregular things about me verbs. The half is the fact that they do a kappa alpha often in the aorist. So there's the half. The second irregular thing they do is they do this funny reduplication in the present stem. If it were just themi, you know, we would understand it better. What makes me verbs confusing is that the very first form we encounter is irregular, or at least is weird. And so the irregular funny reduplication with an iota is the 1.5 weird, the one weird thing. Notice that we still get a kappa alpha in the perfect, but there we have regular reduplication. And if you don't remember, thetas reduplicate, breathy consonants reduplicate with their unbreathy relative. So theta is a dental that's breathy, and t is the unbreathed relative. So tau, delta, theta are all dental consonants, and the tau is used to reduplicate it. So this is perfectly normal to reduplicate with a tau and an epsilon. Notice there are a few quirks here. So notice it's, even though the theta, eta is there, it goes to epsilon iota in the perfect. Who knew? The aorist passive is even weirder. Apparently they didn't want to have ethethane, and so they downgraded. It's a similar phonetic phenomenon as happened here. They downgraded what should have been a theta here to a theta, to a tau, and then there's an epsilon in between. Okay, so the song was Didomi doso edoka dedoka dedamai edathane. Those basic principles of that song, the principal parts of Didomi, apply here for tithemi as well. So I said 2.5 weird things. The half is the kappa alpha. The first one is the funny reduplication. The second one is that we have different present tense endings. The song for Didomi was Didomi, Didos, Didosi, Didamen, Didate, Dida-a-si. Well, same dynamics. We have long vowels in the singular and short vowels in the plural. Same endings. Mis, Didomi, Didos, Didosi, si, same endings. Didamen, Didate, Dida-si. So the alpha C is the same also with the epsilon in front of it. And so actually, this is very similar. 2.5 weird things about me verbs. The kappa is the half, ti is one, and then the funny endings, new endings in the present is the other. So there you have a little Greek review as we finish out our week in Acts 2 with verse, 34 is the last verse we've done this week.